Hi, everybody, or whoever's there. We'll probably take about another minute or two, and we'll see who pops into this hangout that we've scheduled this afternoon. Uh, we're going to talk about Chicago history using primary sources in the classroom. So, like I said, we will commence in just a few moments. Figure I'd give everybody a chance to hop on in. If you are new to Hangouts and all, this will be recorded and saved, and we'll leave it up on the channel so that you guys can refer to this later on. It's just a good way to get everybody live and offline, or off live online, give everybody a chance to really benefit from whatever we're going to talk about today. So like I said, we'll give it a couple minutes, and then hopefully we'll get a couple of people that are popping in at the last minute. I'm also going to, while we wait, try to keep this as painless as possible and keep it down to about a half hour of me talking at the most, and then make sure that we have enough time for people to go over to a Q&A. And I've enabled the Q&A app. You can also type things onto the main screen where it says post a comment or say something under the Google Plus Hangout box. So either way, you can send a little question or a comment or something to me. And if you do it in the Q&A app, which will pop up on the right side, you can see if I'm addressing it at that point or not. All right. So I'll wait about another 30 seconds or so. I know we want to be punctual here so you guys can get done. But at the same time, I know that everybody has tech stuff that they got to work out. If you're interested in doing this sort of format in the future, it's pretty painless. Feel free to shoot me a message, or there's a couple of other people that I'll mention toward the end of this that if you want some help, want a little one-off sheet or something, I'd be happy to show you how to do this format. Like I said, real easy for those who are just joining us. This will be recorded as well, and then we'll post it online so that those who weren't able to join us live can still have an opportunity to talk or to be a part of the dialogue. So, and speaking of dialogue, if you have any questions or comments, you can always post in the Q&A app that is open on your little screen. I'm going to think it's this side for me. I don't know, it may be that side for you, but go ahead and type in on that, or you can go down below and write on the say something box. Either, John, you're not loud enough, or I have a question about this or that. All right, so I think we've given everybody enough chance to pop in here, and if you do want to say something as we go along, don't hesitate to stop, or don't hesitate to wait. Go ahead and jump in. I want to say hello to everybody who bothered to take the time this afternoon. I know it's a Monday afternoon, and it's a really nice one in Chicago. So hopefully you'll get out in time here to enjoy some sunshine. But some of you may have participated in TPS web Google Hangouts before. I'm John Giger. I'm with the TPS program at DePaul University, and I'm also part of the technology group, the Tech Talk group, that has hosted a lot of different tech-based conversations and education over the past year or so, I want to say. So feel free, like I said, to stay tuned with our little hangouts that we do. Also, if you're a part of the TPS Teachers Network, which I'll talk about toward the end, then feel free to join in on some of those conversations as well. Surely not just on Chicago history, but those will be much more on the pedagogy, technology, back and forth. So I guess the first thing for those of you who don't know about TPS in general and want to know a little bit more about that, I'm here, as you can tell in the back. My offices are at DePaul University, and we do professional development for K through 12 teachers, and we also extend out to the community as well, so admin, library. And today's conversation hopefully will involve you all asking me different things that may be on your mind, and it doesn't necessarily have to be teacher-based. It could be just different ideas. It could be different things that you want more resources on. So we'll dive into that in a few. Also, the TPS Teachers Network is a great resource, and I'll show you the link to that toward the end. And that's an opportunity for you to get in touch with other teachers and other resources from around the country. I know I pretty much put this out to Chicagoland people, but if you feel like you want to join a larger conversation on that, I'll show you how to do it at the end. So I guess one of the first things that we'll start off with is a lot of people wanting to know about the difference of using a Chicago history component, whether it is in their lesson, whether it's part of their entire unit, is it a smaller topic? And hopefully what I'm going to show you are some resources and things that you can use to help fulfill all those different scales, whether it be finding a way to tie in local history to a larger unit. That's another way to do this. Or if you are like some schools where you have an entire Chicago history unit. I do see a comment for somebody that says they're trying to sign in. So just if you can see me, there is no signing in as much as just if you can see what I'm saying, that's all you have to do is just hit the little play button in the middle there. So how does Chicago fit into your lesson plans? That's obviously what I was just saying. Is it something that you want as a stylistic addition, or is it something that is really anchoring your lesson unit? We have some teachers who go through chronologically, in which case I'll show you when we do some searching on the LOC site that's real easy to do. You can limit by either topic or by date. That's also really useful when you're trying to pin down certain unit ideas and you know that you want it to be based off of a certain event, a certain era in Chicago history. Other things that you could do is I have to teach X and I want to find a Chicago connection to that. And there are plenty of ways to do that as well. Obviously, there's a little bit of talk about Common Core and different standards. You guys as teachers, if you're watching from that perspective, know unbelievably well by this point all the Common Core implications of how to use primary sources. But you can also remember, again, that literary text and informational text, these informational texts that everybody talks about, these are our primary sources that we're going to be using. So you may not have to necessarily look for a letter from Chicago history, that even using a map or something. And it doesn't always have to be a historic map as well. We can use modern sources and use them inside or in tandem with other sources. And I'll show you some activities that we've done in the past that have used that format. C3 civics, this is a good opportunity as well with tying in Chicago history, and you can either look at different civics components within Chicago history, or if you follow our TPS DePaul unfoldings through the next couple of months, we're going to start talking about more events that involve civics and specifically tying that into your curriculum. So I'm going to show you, hopefully through screen sharing here, the way that we've gone through in the past couple of years and incorporated Chicago history, whether through a specific lesson plan in a broader topic, or whether it's through a level 2 program that we did. For those who aren't familiar with TPS, again, we have different level programs, and level 2s are, the level 1 is kind of an intro using primary sources in the classroom. The level 2, though, usually focuses on a particular topic. And one of the ones we've done in the past was Chicago history. And we used the title Taming the Windy City. And you'll see that in a moment. We've also worked with the Chicago History Museum and are going to continue to do that in the future. So I encourage you to stay tuned for other news. The last time we worked with them, and I've posted materials on that, it was dealing with railroad history from an exhibit they had there. And then we also did a level 2 on site at Chicago, or at DePaul, and utilized a lot of their resources. So I'm going to attempt to screen share here. And the first thing I want to show you is the LOC website. So hopefully you all can see that. The LOC site is really simple to use. Let me make sure you can see my, all right, it appears to be working. We've got a lot of different ways to go about searching the materials on here. Let's say that I want to look for just general Chicago materials. I'm going to go over to the search bar here, and I can just type in Chicago, obviously. Now, if you know specifically what you want within Chicago history, that's going to be much more beneficial to you. One of the pitfalls of searching on sites like this is the idea that I can just, much like if I were going to Google, which I'll show you here, if I type in Chicago history, I'm going to get modern, relevant type Wikipedia. We're getting directions. We're getting things that very broad net. So the same sort of thing is going to happen here. I'm getting a broad net of different types of collections and sources, real popular ones, I guess, as well as some of these filler items that aren't showing any bibliographic detail. So I really want to figure out, for example, I want something on the stockyards. And immediately that's going to take my search down, you can see, to something much more manageable. I notice off the top here as well that I can change format either on the side. I could have also done that through the drop down at the top, but let's say that I want some maps. There's only 2 that are going to come up. And this one in particular, I like. And I can click on that item and take a look at the different, like this is a bird's eye view of the Chicago stockyards. I can download it in different formats on here. I can full screen it if I want to really look into it. Oh, sorry about that. You can see the detail that comes in. There's a manure pile. And if I go back, one of the benefits as well, once you get through that first hurdle, is I can start to look through these different clickable links on the right side. And this is really useful for when I look for materials, and especially for when students are doing research. You're going to want to make sure that the vocabulary is similar to what maybe historically is relevant. That's something that we struggle with a lot. I know even as adults, is remembering not everything is called what it used to be called. And I can go by date here. If I pop back over, you see that I also could have limited by date. on the side limiters here. I want my original search, but let's say that I'm going back to my Rasher map here. I can also click by location or subjects, and these subjects are great. I can click on Chicago, Illinois, for example, as a subject. And now I'm looking at all formats that have the subject of Chicago. Some of them are great panoramas, some of them are posters, some of them are papers. This is a catalog record though, so watch out. But you can see that immediately, here's a political cartoon, that immediately takes out another layer of, I want to browse, but I want to browse through Chicago itself. And if at any point I want to change that, I can take this off through the little X, or I can continue to manipulate the search on the side here. That is one way to go about looking for results in terms of Chicago history. The other way is by particular format, as we had been talking about. There's a bunch of different collections, like in prints and photographs, and you can go through maps as well, or film and sound through here. I'm going to use prints and photos to show you the same way that you would use these other collections. So if I click on the Migrant Mother on the front square there, I'm going to get the home page for the different prints and photos collections for the LOC. And when I scroll down, you're going to see this big old list of collections here. Some of these are going to be more obvious than others. However, there is no explicit Chicago history collection. Unfortunately, it's not that easy. But if I go through, I can also change the view here if I want and make it smaller or bigger. You can do that on any page at the LOC. One of the first really good collections to look at is the Detroit Publishing Company. And if I keep scrolling down here, right here, the Detroit Publishing Company. This collection, I'll pop over this way, you get, and all the collections are going to be this way. You'll get some stuff about the collection on the front page, and then some other supplemental resources on the side, maybe expert resources, sometimes teacher resources down here. But these will have plenty through the collection items. We'll have plenty on Chicago, namely because Detroit Publishing, they were a newspaper company nearby. You know, you can look through for prints in this collection. You can come down here, locations, and you can also do, if I keep going, the subjects. You just have to hit more subjects, but you'll see it's not quite enough to break the 1,000, the 1,500 mark, but there are plenty of Chicago-related ones in there. Another collection on the back end here is the FSA OWI, the Farm Security Administration. And if I keep going, these two in particular, there's the black and white negatives and there's the color negatives. They also have a lot of Chicago history materials in there. And then there's a lot of, pardon me, there's a lot of other newspaper type collections from this era. So the Genth collection and some of the other survey type collections, like the architecture survey and engineering survey off the front page. If I scroll down a little, this one right here, architecture and design, they're not going to be very upfront on the Chicago connection. You may have to run a couple searches. You may have to look for example, like the architecture collection here has a lot on the bridges in Chicago, or the history of different, like the I&M Canal, and we've used that. You get a lot of drawings and schematics with that, especially if you're looking for STEM tie-in. That's really a useful component. Another one, if I go back to the home page, is the historic newspapers. And if I click on that guy, little ship, and I scroll down, they've added this page. You're going to see this is called Chronicling America. For those of you that have used this before, you know that this is a wealth of knowledge from the 1830s to the 1920s. There are fully digitized resources, newspapers at the LOC. And one of the things that you can do here also is run an advanced search, and you can limit it by state, thereby giving you Chicago history, or maybe you want an out-of-state perspective as well. So that's one way to think about it. Another one is if you come down a little bit here, you see recommended topics. Those of you who have gone through programs with me know that I praise this as a way to bridge that search term subject heading chronological barrier that we face with not knowing the terminology of the era. So I can go through here as well and look through subjects. There may be some that pull in Chicago history that'll be useful to you in here. One other collection that would be worth a little gander is the Vets History Project, and I'll show you how we've used this in a couple of activities. If you search the veterans collections, though, here, these are oral histories and supplemental materials with veterans going back to World War I. And you can browse on the top here when I go through and go by state of residence. And this is a great way if I go through Illinois, down here, there's a couple of other ways through the Vets History Home that I can look through and get some Chicago voices, especially during the Second World War. There's a lot of good content in here. So those are just a handful of the different collections that are at the LOC that you can use to start your searches. I will also say that the Chicago History Museum used to, I'll come back so you all can see me. The Chicago History Museum hosts the Chicago Daily News collection, and that used to be available on the Library of Congress site. When they updated when they updated American Memory, that went away, and you can access through their digital collections the Daily News. It's much like the Detroit Publishing Company collection, except just based in Chicago as opposed to based across the lake. So the next component that I want to show you are some of the uses that we've gone through in terms of our program and using some of these sources. I'm going to share my screen again with you guys. I'm going to a site, and I will post the link later on our main page. That it's a little long. You can copy it down. You'll see it up in the top nav bar when I start. But this will be an amended page from our level 2 that we did on Chicago history. And what I've done is incorporated not only the ones that we did from level 2, but I also put in a couple others from working with the folks at the DBQ project and when we worked with the Chicago History Museum. And then I will show you as well on our level 1 page, we have a big thing on the Chicago fire. And that's more of an exemplar lesson plan. For those who have done level 1, you know exactly what I'm talking about and already have those files. But if I come through, and I'm going to share my screen again with you guys. Hopefully this works. And there we go. You see this very basic site here. I have up on the top this website. It says condor.depaul.edu/TPS and /resources/level2/Chicago. And I know that it's kind of a type full there. And like I said, I will share it down in the main page later on. One of the reasons is we just don't put links to this off of our main homepage so that we don't lose people in the back end of our resource sites. But this is open to all of you all. One of the big hits that we had was the World's Fair activity. And what you'll notice is when you click on one of these headers, it's going to give you the directions for the activity and then all the different links that you would need. So in this case, I'm going to look at the Chronicling America article, for example, that I have everyone start off reading, and this is about the opening of the Chicago's Columbian Exposition. And you can go through and read that, mark it up. Chronicling America does let you copy the text out of this. So if you want to do excerpts, we've done that before as well. There's then guidebooks and maps. And what we normally have teachers do is go through and pretend like it's a travel log. And we have a large map of, I believe we use this one. You'll have to forgive me. I can't always remember which one we printed off. But we have all the files here. Well, this is good enough. You'll get the idea that we print off the map that has all the different buildings. And we basically say you have a day or 2 or 3 at the fair. Plan your route and write a little log on what you think you would have seen. And we go through then and have these different guidebooks as well, and they show both photographs and floor plans and different materials of the different buildings. The catch, of course, is that you are only human, and so you have to pick, like any fair, what you're going to see and what you have to kind of give up on, and then why you went there and what you would have seen. Another resource one, I'm going to skip this for a second. There's an advertising activity that we have here, and this goes through Chicago being one of the homes or the birthplace of the mail order kind of catalog industry, and how different companies advertise different products. You can use that a lot of different ways, but you can either open up completely the opportunity for teachers to, or for students to explore different ads, or you can give them a handful of ads and then have them analyze those as well. Underneath that is a WPA narrative activity, and this is using a lot of those FSA resources. There's oral histories of workers in Chicago, and then we have a graphic organizer that we've added as well on, and kind of going through and breaking down what this individual was doing, what you can get out of the narrative, a quote. You get the idea of, you can change that organizer to however you want. We used a variation on that for slave narratives, for example. And then I used these, oh, I gotta fix that link. We use these different, these are the directions, and then you'll see afterward, here's, for example, Irish married to a Pole Union member, which is what it says. And then you can get the resource here, and you can read about what it was like working in the packing house in the 30s. The next one, I'm going to skip other resources as well. This is the Chicago Fire resources from our level 1. So you can go through the Chicago History Museum, for example, has a rather large version of the historic path of the fire. This is useful. And like I said, this is still good to use, even though it's not from the 19th century. When you go and we have students plot out using the path of the fire and, or reports of the path of the fire, it's nice to be able to compare the older maps to the newer geography. And that's one of the big problems or the solutions to the problem of putting things into context. Then underneath that, I've got 2 different tabs for the Eastland disaster. And this was from when we worked with the folks at the DBQ project. This is about teaching difficult topics. And you'll see that there are the instructions here. The first bit looks at photographs and newspaper articles from the Eastland. And then there's also footage that I've embedded here, as well as you can click the link to see here, for example, the salvage attempts on the Eastland. There it is in the background. You can obviously make this full screen if you wanted to. I don't want to jinx my screen sharing here, so I'm not going to do it right this moment. Then the second part is looking at the Seoul disaster that happened in Korea or off the coast there, and you can watch YouTube footage and read modern coverage and compare that to the previous Eastland 19th or early 20th century coverage to now the early 21st century coverage. We also had one other activity from that about Chicago in the Gilded Age, and we're looking at immigrants in the neighborhoods. For example, here is a nationalities map from the Hull House Museum. And it will load, there we go. And breaking down into color, we actually separated this into different pages and made a PDF out of it on that other page as well. And then comparing that to what it looks like in the present, and then looking at other Gilded Age photographs and different professions and things. Now I'm going to back up to the top here. This is, I skipped this one, the CHM, the Chicago History Museum links. There are some resources in here, for example, about the Haymarket Affair. There's also a couple other resource collections home links, like the online resources portal there, that you can click to take you directly to Chicago History Museum materials. And again, some of those used to be on the LOC. They just changed their layout, so they're wholly credible and great folks over there. If you have any problems, let them know. They'll get you squared away. And then underneath here, I have other resources listed. You don't have to worry about session agendas, but if you look through, there are other activities here. For example, the railroad activity with a game board map. This is about using a map of the railway network in the Midwest, and then kind of moving along hub by hub, not like Monopoly, but there's a chart as well that has the fees schedules. And so this is a good STEM tie-in. You can see that you select different companies that you want to be. They're fictional, don't worry. And then you go through and write down your profits and losses with each step. So again, the materials are all here for that. There's also a portage activity about looking at the architecture and engineering documents and doing some math about distance and going through the locks and all those different things. There's Chronicling America links here. There's also America's Library for our younger users. Illinois has its own tab. And of course, Chicago has a bunch of different tabs here, like early movies and the Chicago Botanic Garden. If you've never used America's Story and you teach elementary, this is a fantastic resource. The downside, of course, being is that it doesn't really search. It's more of a browsing resource, and so that's why I provide the links this way. However, you can just click America's Story and you see the homepage here. And then there's also an LOC space Folklife in your state down here. And that will take you to Illinois' page, and you can continue to look through additional resources there. The American Folklife Center is great, and they have a lot of different interviews and work with different groups that you'll see in some of those other resources. Just they're constantly in the middle of things, even though their banner may not be on the top of it. So those are some of the resources that we've put on here. Again, I'll share this URL later on the front page, and you can revisit that. And again, if you have any other problems or questions with resources for Chicago history, I can go ahead and do that in terms of putting together some more for you. If you click this header, or you type in tps.depaul.edu, it will take you to a page that looks kind of like this one. Actually, it will look exactly like this one. This is our homepage, and our being TPS DePaul. And you can get in touch with Dave Bates, who's our project director. His email is up here, and then mine is down here. I'm John Giger, like I said before. Also, there are resources on this page if you're interested in our level programs. You can click on programs on the side. There is, however, a resources tab, and if you click on that, it will take you to this box navigation with the tabs. There are lesson plans that our teachers have done that you can look through, some of which are Chicago related. There's also a curriculum tab and some more resources like our previous newsletters that you can look through. In terms of teacher resources at the LOC, if you go to loc.gov/teachers, enter, you'll be taken to the LOC teachers page, and there are lesson plans on this as well. There are other materials, all under classroom materials here, that relate to Chicago history. You have to dig a little bit more in these, but certainly you can connect the dots, even if it's not directly affiliated with Chicago. So I will stop sharing my screen now. And that brings us to just after 5 o'clock. I'm going to open up the floor/window to questions, and feel free to type in whatever you want, and within reason, and I'll see what I can do here. But we'll open it up to everybody and just start firing away. Hopefully for those of you who just joined, maybe a little late, no problem. I'm soliciting questions now, so you can either type them underneath, or you can, there should be a box on the side of your screen that you can type into. And either way, I'm looking at the screen, and make sure I refresh this one. There we go. So I will post the URLs to these different pages, again, that I showed you. And it really, if it comes down to you're looking at general Chicago history, using an LOC search is going to be one of the more effective ways to go about that, just a general search. Remember, good search techniques. You don't want to just type in Chicago history. You want to type in things that are a little bit more specific. You can then use date modifiers. You can use individuals to really help bring it down. Okay, I got a question here. It says you're teaching a lesson on the race riots in a couple of days. That's a great topic. Actually, our director, Dave Bates, he is real big into labor history, and especially the Chicago race riots. And so I know that we do have resources off of that. One of the big sources that comes into my head is the Chicago History Museum would have a lot on that. There's also a couple of different places like the DuSable Museum, and I wonder, at the top of my head, maybe History Makers here in Chicago as well. But in terms of the Library of Congress, 1919 is good for that. You would probably, in terms of perspective from two different racial viewpoints, you may want to dig in through the newspapers. Chronicling America is the first thing that I think of there. And of course, then you're going to get bias, which I assume is what you're looking for in that capacity. If you send Dave an email, only because I know he has exhausted research on this, or myself, and then I'm happy to forward it on to him, we can really get you a lot on that within the next 24 hours or so. So hopefully that gives you something to go. Chronicling America would be a really good one, especially the coverage, because that goes in through the 20s, so you'll easily cover it. And then some of the local museums in Chicago, like the History Museum, and before. Oh, okay, here we go. Chicago. Dave responded with Chicago History Museum has the best collection. So again, reinforcing that one. His email, I'll just broadcast it out to the world here. Sorry, Dave, is dbates2@depaul.edu. And we'll, like I said, that's on our homepage as well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit to go on. And One thing, I guess, is as I wait for maybe more questions, is breaking that one-stop shop mentality that maybe not for you as teachers, but with students especially, expecting that you just plug in something and like Google, I'm going to type in all the keywords and then out comes magical solutions to my problem. And that's not the case. So we're more than happy to reinforce our partner museums and institutions in terms of especially local history. You really need to work with special collections. If you have the ability to visit a special collections or an archive in your area, or get some folks to come in and talk about that, I strongly encourage it. Where will the Condor DePaul EDU be linked? I'll tell you what, right now I will go on our main Hangout page here and I will type it in, hopefully without shaking the computer too much. And level 2 / Chicago. And so, all right, I just shared that on the main page. Again, if you don't want to wait that long, it's condor.depal.edu/TPS/resources/level2/Chicago. I know it's a lot. It helps keep things organized. So no worries on that. We've got one here about recent history, like Chicago's good old Richard Daley. And that is a little bit harder, especially because of politics, I guess. Jay Daley even is a little hit or miss, like Royko and those journalists managed to get a lot. But collections like UIC has a lot in regards to mid-century to the present. The History Museum as well. The problem is you have to rely on what's donated by those folks for their political primary sources, and then the rest, like media, thinking like WTTW and different media archives would have things, or newspapers like the Tribune and the Sun-Times. However, with modern sources like this, you're always going to run into either firewalls, access restrictions, or just lack of things being put out there in the public sphere by the individuals involved. I know I worked briefly with some things on Harold Washington years ago, and that was, like Edward Doliak being a part of Council Wars. There were certain materials in there that we wish we would have had, but because he hasn't given those over yet, it's a big kind of black hole there. There are obviously a lot of good texts as well, but then understanding, secondary source material at that point. In terms of Evanston, I would say one of the best ways for some of the surrounding groups, so Oak Park, Evanston, some of the south suburbs, all of those have local historical societies. I know the Northwestern University Library will have a lot of material. Evanston will have some hold in the Library of Congress as well, especially the same time frames that we were looking at in Chronicling America or the other collections. You're just going to have luck on the roll on whether it's labeled Evanston, whether it's labeled Chicago. Evanston has done pretty well with their local history collections from what I've seen, and talking with folks at Northwestern would probably give you a leg up. They also have like you might even look into groups like Rotary or somebody who has a local presence and has a network that way. So I think it also depends on how far back you want to go. If you're looking at Evanston in terms of early settlement of the region, I would say broaden your search even more to just looking at the Chicago area, because a lot of the surveys done that I've seen that include Chicago as the focus, nevertheless still added Evanston. They added the South Shore by Gary now and Calumet and all, and that was part of still the larger source, but it may not be explicitly labeled that when you first look at it. So, and then obviously, any other Chicago-based collection, still I would run an Evanston search through there, because sometimes you're getting the other side of a story. So, all right, we're at 5:15 right now. Any other questions, feel free to throw those over. Like I said, one of the emphasis points that I had today was just basic search techniques, understanding that don't get too granular as well, but don't throw a really big net. You're really going to kind of choke yourself off there in what you find. And it'll be really frustrating to your students too, when they type in, I want this, and nothing comes up. And tinkering with some of those search terms will really help. Also thinking about the format. I know that with lesson plans, you're looking to either fill a gap or you want something that really covers a whole unit. So just depending on what you're looking for, let me know. Go and shoot an email to a librarian at one of your local institutions, whether it be a university, a historical society. Chicago City Hall, you may have a longer wait, but the Cook County Archives even has plenty. And some of these will take a trip if you work with high schoolers. I work with History Fair, and so certainly encourage them to take a trip if it's something within their abilities. Otherwise, I know a lot of these institutions are happy to share resources as well. The LOC, definitely, if you contact a librarian there, whether it's in the Folklife Center, whether you're talking to somebody just at a research desk at the LOC, they're really going to come back and give you some good material, usually more than you wanted, in a good way. And they're pretty good on the turnaround as well. As I often joke, I've worked in libraries before. It's a lot better to do reference work than administrative work. So throw it at them and see what comes back. We've had some piece on the question front here, so I will throw out another 30 seconds or so, and if nobody has any other questions, we'll slowly wrap things up. I will, in that time, plug the TPS Teachers Network that is not just good for Chicago local history people, because you're getting a national net thrown as well. So that is just TPS Teachers Network, all one word, and then .org at the end. You'll also be able, I think, linked off of our newsletters, sometimes we'll have things. And then the teachers page at the LOC always links things from there as well. So you'll see that there's a network, no pun intended, a net of things that are all strewn together. And the network is really good for talking with other individuals that may work with the similar types of queries that you'll have, but with their local interest. And that's a good way to bounce off styles of activities. So whether it's a sorting activity that can be scaled very easily, whether it's something geography related, STEM related, cooperating with other departments, or even doing just PD days and workshops, it's a real good resource as well. All right, so in the effort of letting everybody go see the sun before it disappears again, I will wrap up here. And again, if you're still interested in our resources, you can hit tps.depaul.edu, and Dave and myself, our email is listed on there. And then there's also, if you stay tuned to our newsletter, you can sign up for it on there. We have an upcoming event with the Chicago History Museum. We have an upcoming event with the DBQ Project. And then we have our own events, both level 1 and level 2, that will be happening at some point in the future, this spring and this summer. So thank you all for tuning in, and happy Monday, and good Chicago history. Thanks.